Good afternoon. The school board briefing of Tuesday, July 28th is now in session. We have six items on our agenda today. We'll start with executive series with Dr. Graham with our legislative update with Mr. Bob Serra. Dr. Graham, would you please introduce our legislative liaison?
Our esteemed guest today is Bob Serra, who works with us and for us in Tallahassee, and he's here to give us a legislative update based on the regular session and the extended session. So Bob, welcome. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you. It's great to be here. And while it took a little longer than I think any of us wanted, including the delegation, we have brought the session in for a close and have a budget, and we're ready to go. So for today, we have the outline for today. We're going to get just a quick session overview of what we were facing. We'll get a summary of the education budget. We're going to look at four major education bills, but I think you're going to see when we get into the four major education bills that there's really one and then three others. And then we're going to look at about half dozen others that are really more single issue bills that have an impact, but certainly nothing on the order of what House Bill 7069 had. And then we'll look a little bit towards next year. So for the session overview, every session has one or two major issues that tend to define and color all of the other issues that the legislature has to deal with. In this session, those two issues were both healthcare related. We had the Senate with their request to expand Medicaid as is allowed by the federal law. And the problem with the low-income pool for healthcare, where the LIP program had been funding about $1.5 billion towards low-income health care, primarily being delivered in emergency rooms, and that program was being phased out by the federal government, and so that kind of interplay of those two issues brought the entire session to a halt at one point. But the governor proposed his budget in February, and in February it looked like we were smooth sailing for about 3 days. The governor had a very healthy increase per student for public education, but then within a week there started to be murmurs about the low-income pool, and all of a sudden these issues started snowballing, and it seemed that the governor's budget may not truly balance since it was relying on these federal dollars that were possibly not going to be there. So we started the regular session, and both the House and Senate moved budgets to the floor and passed them. The education budgets were just slightly below what the governor had recommended, and about halfway through session, our progress on the budget stopped. We never reached the point of sitting down for budget conference and starting to work through the differences. And when the budget fully blew up with about a week left in session, it didn't just take the budget down with it, it also took down virtually every bill that was out there that wasn't tied specifically to the budget, which is why we're going to see that there's really only a handful of bills that passed this year. In some ways, that limited what our delegation could do for us. In other ways, it limited what the legislature could do to you. Ultimately, we came back a month later and cooler heads prevailed. We resolved the budget. The federal government indicated what the future was going to hold for the low-income pool, which is still a problem moving forward because it is going to be phased out, but at least we know where we sit for this year, and they were able to resolve a budget And we ended up with a total potential for public education that was virtually the same as what the governor recommended. But between when the governor did his budget in February and when the final budget was passed in June, the number of students statewide increased. And so we're not at the per student amount that the governor recommended, but there is still a fairly healthy increase, and we'll see that when we get into the specifics. So, as I said, it is a healthy increase. It's nowhere near a historic increase like we saw in maybe 2006 or 2007, where the increase for Lee County alone was on the order of $75 million year over year. It wasn't anything like that, but we're also not dealing with what we dealt with in 2008 or 2009 when we were going backwards in a significant way. There were two minor formula changes, and these two formula changes did not benefit Lee County, but these were two minor changes. There were four that were on the table. None of them would have benefited us. These were the two that were much more minor compared to the other two that were on the table. There was a proposal to double the amount of the per district grant for the digital classrooms allocation, and that did not happen. That would have primarily benefited small and rural counties. And there was a proposal to increase the equalization of the discretionary local effort to 105% of the statewide average per student. That would have redirected about $30 million. That was not adopted, but we did adopt a federally impacted student item, which there's about 8 or 9 districts that will receive some funding from it, but it was primarily benefits 2 districts. And there was an increase to the sparsity supplement, which was primarily for 1 district. The workload of students statewide was recognized and funded. Now, of course, that's an estimate, and so we have to see what happens as we get to our final count next year in February, March. But the official number that exists statewide was adopted and funded by the budget. And the one criticism, if you want to look at this as being, not a fantastic budget, is that the vast majority of the increase to the total potential is coming from local sources, which is to say this isn't general revenue that could have been taken to use to backfill the LIP problem, for example, because those dollars aren't state dollars that they can appropriate. So, that's one way of looking at it if you want to, balance that picture out. But overall, the dollars for you are the same. The sources are more something for citizens and taxpayers to look at. So statewide, the base student allocation increased to $4,154.45. This is an increase of $122.68, or 3.04%. Now, the BSA is a number that goes into the formula. This is the number and the percentage that most closely relates to the percentage that the legislature is providing for inflation. Okay, so that's why this number is important. That's what that most closely relates to. The total average funding per student, dollars, is up to $19.684 billion, which is an increase of $779.9 million, or 4.13%. And the difference between the 3% in per student and the 4.13% in total potential is your growth in students, your workload increase. So locally, the total funding per student is up to $7,284.31. So we receive about $190 more per student than the statewide average per student. The increase that we received year over year was $166.93 per student, or 2.35%. So we didn't quite make the statewide average of the 3% per student, but then we look at what happened with the total potential dollars. Our total potential for operations is $656.6 million. It's an increase of $27.88 million, or 4.43%. So our total potential is going up by more than the statewide average, largely because we're growing faster than the statewide average. Now, one quirk, this is not part of the operations formula in the FEFP, but this was a line item that was funded by the legislature called the Florida Best and Brightest Teacher Program. That's a great name, but the program is a little questionable. What we're doing is we're going to deliver up to $10,000 per teacher who is highly effective in the last rating issued, and when they took the SAT or the ACT, they were in the top 20% of scores. Now, these test scores could be 20 years old, they could be 40 years old, they could be 2 years old, and actually teachers, if they're able to take the test now and get their score in and report them to you by October 1, they could be months old. Teachers are allowed to go back and take these exams if they wish. There is no research to support that being in the top 20% of ACT or SAT takers has any impact on student performance, and so we're not really sure why they did this. It is limited to highly effective teachers, but we could have limited any kind of bonus program to highly effective teachers to all of them. $44 million, we're looking, it's, there's 2.8 million students, so you're talking about, $18 per student that was, we could have had on a per student basis. But this was done. We're going to have to collect the data from the teachers are going to have to submit it to us that they were highly effective and prove that they received scores, that in the year that they took the test and received the scores, that they were in the top 20%. And we'll compile that list on a template that the DOE will design. We'll submit it to the DOE. The DOE will look at the number of folks. They'll either fund $10,000 per eligible teacher, or they'll prorate it based upon the number that are eligible. And we'll get the money next year in February or March, and then by April 1, we'll have to distribute that money to the teachers. They've called it a scholarship because they wanted to link it to the SAT and the ACT, which are all about going to college and getting degrees. But the money will be processed through payroll with all the various payroll taxes. So that's a little quirk of that was done. Two other items that I'll mention. The legislature did fund slightly less than $2 million for the DOE to buy liability insurance for teachers and to require the DOE to buy that for them. And there is also a question surrounding the digital classrooms allocation, which is $40 million statewide that flows. It's the technology money now. The Senate had hoped that there would be an independent study of district plans to spend that money to look at what the gap analysis really is from between what the DOE standard is and where we are and where we hope to be in a year. The governor vetoed the money to do that study. The proviso says that the money doesn't get distributed until the study is done, but proviso isn't allowed to change the law that says there's already a distribution. So the Senate is trying to get the DOE to do a study, and the belief is that the DOE probably doesn't have to do the study and that the money will get transmitted to the districts after our plans are received. We anticipate that the DOE will have a template on this in the next couple of weeks. The district will put its plan into that, and then we anticipate that the money will flow at that point, probably October, November. But there is this little hiccup, and there is a letter that former Senate President Gates and that Senator Munford co-signed, trying to force the DOE to follow the proviso and to complete this independent study that is no longer funded. Capital outlay. The PICO maintenance for public schools was funded at $50 million. In the year prior, statewide, that was funded at $53 million. So there was a very small decrease there statewide. The distribution is based upon the traditional formula. Charter schools in this budget will receive $50 million. In the prior year, they received $75 million. This is again for capital outlay. This is an issue and a concern. The one good thing about charter schools receiving capital outlay off the top of PICO, as opposed to receiving any local share as a mandate from the legislature from you, is that the state is actually supporting charter schools in the districts that have been supportive of charter schools. In essence, we're bringing more money home locally when that happens. So that's just something to keep in mind, and that will be a budget pressure on those schools to have received that $25 million cut. Are there any questions about the budget? So as I said, there's really one big bill.
1 second, Bob.
Sure.
Yes, Ms. Dozier?
You want to go ahead and have us
If,
field
why don't we
questions
go ahead,
right
if,
now?
yeah,
Okay.
with the
I
budget.
was writing them down for the end. In this teacher incentive, or the Teacher Florida's Best and Brightest program, you said that no matter how old their ACT scores are, but they have to provide proof that they were in the top 20%. Is that what you said?
Well, they'll have to provide the score to us. I'm sure that the DOE will verify what the scores were in every particular year for both the SAT and the ACT. And that's going to be a little bit of a research project. But if the scores are 40 years old, they'll either have to provide a transcript that shows the scores, or they'll have to go back and see whether those organizations have maintained the scores where they can get another score report. Again, I didn't write it. I'm just the messenger.
Who sponsored that bill?
This was done in the budget itself, but the understanding was that this was something that the speaker wanted done himself. So there wasn't a separate bill in the special session. There was one in the regular session that ultimately, like all the bills, ended up dying.
Okay. One other question. When you talk about DOE is now going to provide liability insurance for teachers, what is the dollar amount per teacher for that liability insurance that DOE is going to fund? Do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head. I believe that the amount appropriated was about $1.6 or $1.7 million. I believe that was statewide. Yeah, statewide. I think that's the number, but I don't have it in front of me.
Do they know how many teachers we have?
We have about 185,000 teachers on the order of that statewide.
Thank you.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes, on the Best and Brightest Teacher Scholarship, so if people can't locate those scores,
Take it over.
then they can take it again and provide the score, assuming that they end up in the top 20%
Well,
currently?
the deadline for them submitting documentation for us is really quick. So the true answer is that if they don't find the scores, there's probably going to be some issues. I'm not even sure that they could take it and get the scores back in time. But you know, the DOE issued a technical assistance paper, I think it was yesterday on this, and so I just read that, and you have to have your score in both language arts and math has to be in the top 20%, or your combined score has to be. So if you took, you know, part one year and the other part the next year, you could combine the scores, but and each one has to be in the top 20%. There's no research to back this up as being something that is beneficial for students, but if I were a teacher and I qualified, I'd get my documentation together because it's up to $10,000.
Right.
And you'll receive that sometime prior to April 1 if you're qualified.
So that's a big carrot for those highly effective teachers. So if they were to take the test currently and say they've been teaching for 25 years, would they have to be in the top 20% of 25 years ago, or would they have to be in the top 20% today?
Today.
By today's
Administration of the
standards,
tests
'cause
that they
That's
take.
totally different.
The administration of the tests that they take. So if they took the test this year, and again, I'm not sure that that you could even register for an exam, take the exam, and get your scores back in time to meet the deadline that they have to
submit.
provide the score to us. But the technical assistance paper from the DOE suggested that the scores could be brand new, and it was okay.
This is age discrimination.
And then, I just have one more. And regarding the liability insurance, then, is that across the board? Does that go with teacher certification, or is there a premium for teachers to get the liability insurance?
There is no premium for
Premium.
teachers.
Okay. Thank you.
Wait, hold on, Ms. LaRiviere. Mr. Martin.
In response to Mrs. Dozier's question, the amount of the coverage is $2 million.
Say that again?
$2 million for the liability
Is that
coverage for
per
those.
teacher?
Yes. It's all for all full-time instructional personnel.
I apologize. I thought you asked how much they budgeted for it. I think, but yeah, the amount of coverage is in the implementing bill.
Okay.
Ms. LaRiviere.
This just reeks of age discrimination. I'm sorry, no teacher who's been teaching for 10 years or more has kept their ACT or SAT scores. So I find fault with it. I did at the beginning, and I still do.
Mr. Sarah, please continue with your bills.
So we have the one major bill, and we have three others that we're going to look at. House Bill 7069 on school accountability. We'll start with the school start date issue. Districts are allowed to start the student calendar starting as early as August 10th now, and that will be a fixed date in the law. I know that we did not move our date up this year, but it is in the law now where we can do that in the future, and that's up to you. That has been, you know, that late start date has been something that has been bothering school boards and local control ever since it was passed in 2007, and this was a significant victory. The other changes that were made in here, by and large, past laws that were very rigid were made slightly less rigid. However, you've already, in many cases, adopted policies on the very rigid requirements, which means you could leave those in place, or we could go through the work of taking the additional flexibility, which involves potentially a lot of work. It could be work for your collective bargaining. It could be work for your assessment and evaluation folks. There's a lot of different teams that could be involved in what has to be done in order to accept the flexibility. But if we don't want to accept the flexibility, by and large, we'll have adopted systems that'll meet these requirements already, because the requirements are relaxed from what they were a year ago. So for student assessment, we deleted requirements to regularly assess K through 3 students in reading and references to progress monitoring. We repealed the 11th grade ELA assessment, which was a specific plank that you adopted in December last year when we looked at the accountability system and our recommendations for it. We required that in courses that have a state EOC exam, students will have to take those exams. That was already the law. But now we're not allowed to have a district required final on top of a state EOC if it's one of those courses that has a state EOC. The implementation schedule for 3rd and 4th graders to transition into computer-based exams is established in the bill. We require any new or renewed state contracts for state assessments to include provisions that will require the scores to be returned to teachers and parents prior to the end of the school year. We require the DOE to collect liquidated damages on their AIR contract if the contracts provide for it, and if they collect any damages, those are to be distributed to the districts that were the ones that were actually damaged by the failures in the rollout. It deletes references to local assessments of all subject and grade levels not covered by a state assessment to need a district final exam. So previously, for performance pay, for every grade, subject, and course not covered by a state EOC or one of the other state assessments, we had to design an a final exam that would be part of performance pay evaluations. Now we're still required for the assessment of those courses, grades, and subjects, but we don't have to have a final exam for each one of those courses and grades. So we can determine how to do that, and in kindergarten we can do it in the ways we used to do it, as opposed to having a final exam for kindergarten, and that this is giving you that power back that was taken away in 736. We require that if there is a district required assessment, that teachers and parents need to get those scores within 30 days. We deleted the requirement to take the PERT exam, which was something that this board considered in December, and we ultimately rejected it because we wanted to make sure that the PERT exam would still be available for those students that needed it as a substitute for the Algebra 1 EOC. The legislature actually took care of that because they've deleted the requirement for all students to take it. However, it still will be available for the students that need it. And also on this, they're allowing the district to hire paraprofessionals specifically to assist with state assessments. So this is something that we may look at in our test administration to try to keep the teacher doing instruction where possible, and if we're only pulling out small groups of students to do the testing, we can use paraprofessionals for that where we weren't allowed to do that before. They require the commissioner to publish a uniform assessment calendar, and they'll send a template to the districts. We'll fill it in with all of our district required exams and the other exams that we administer, and then they'll publish that calendar. As part of that, they're using that calendar to prove that no student is being required to have more than 5% of their instructional time on mandated state or district required assessments. So this doesn't count your weekly spelling, bee thing. This is only district exams and state exams. There are some exemptions for students that might have an IEP that allows for various accommodations on testing, and also potentially for students that are receiving AP or IB or CAPE classes where they're receiving various certifications that have additional value to them, where those exams don't necessarily count towards that 5%. As it relates to student progress and remediation, we're deleting requirements for remediation in middle school for level 1 and level 2 students in English, language arts, and math. We're deleting remediation requirements for high school students in state ELA, English Language Arts, Mathematics, and Algebra 1. But we still have requirements to have a pupil progression plan that have some of the same similar elements, but not necessarily that you're going to have to do remediation specifically. But obviously you're going to address the fact that they're not on grade level or that they're not meeting the course requirements for algebra. So we revised the good cause exemptions for English language learning students, and we require that students not meeting the district or state requirements for satisfactory performance in ELA or math must be covered by either an IEP, an individualized progress monitoring plan, or a school-wide system of progress monitoring for all students. So if students aren't meeting it, we're going to have some way of monitoring each of them. So the test validation was another portion that was added, particularly by the Senate. They're going to require a third-party independent review of the exam for validity and reliability, and certain scores can't be published by the DOE nor used for various state accountability measures until the study is completed. So when that study is completed, the DOE will publish those scores, and then we'll have use of them for those various purposes.
Was there any discussion in that bill about who would be that third party or where that group would come from?
There was a review team created to do the RFP and to review the responses where the governor, the speaker, and the president each got one nominee. That group, which included Dr. Joyner, who's the superintendent in St. Johns County, that's who the governor appointed, put an RFP out. They received a single response, and they were left to adopt that response. And that's what they've done, and that group that they've hired is working on the validation study. The group met their minimum requirements for what it took to prove their expertise, and so we'll see when that study is completed, what that involves. I know that they have just begun doing on-site surveys of what the problems were that happened in various districts, because I know that at least one of those happened in Northwest Florida, because I saw on Facebook one of the superintendents posting that he was hosting it for them and bringing people together to get those responses from parents and teachers and others about what the concerns were in the rollout.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Fisher?
And what is the identity of the company who responded to the RFP?
I'll have to send you the name of that company. It's not a company that I've heard of before.
Okay.
It was their only response. They're out of Utah, I know that. It's not a secret. The name is known. I don't have that memorized, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
So the last major area where we made changes, so we reduced the overall amount of testing. We changed some requirements as it related to pupil progression and remediation. We had this validation study and delayed some impacts to accountability until that study is back. And then the last area is with personnel evaluations and performance pay. The commissioner is required to publish the status of each district's evaluation system for instructional personnel and school administrators. For the purposes of those evaluations, it used to be you had to have a half based on student performance and a half could be on other measures. They're making it 1/3 on student performance, 1/3 on instructional practice, and the remainder on other indicators that are determined locally. So if we had adopted a 50-50 system, we could leave that in place. That would meet these minimum requirements. However, we have the option of reopening all of those issues if we choose. It's a lot of work, but the flexibility is something that we asked for, so we've received it. They did a similar thing as it related to the evaluation of school administrators. They are retaining the state use of the VAM formula, and they mandate that the districts use it for those teachers that are covered by the state exams. Again, for the grades and subjects that are not covered by state assessments, the districts have to come up with their own tests, but they no longer have to be an end-of-course exam, but we have to come up with the system. And less than effective teachers and school administrators must participate in a district professional development. By August 1, the DOE has to adopt rules on how districts will submit their evaluation systems for review and approval. So that's the big bill, and there will be a lot of work for district staff based upon utilizing that flexibility if we determine that we want to use the flexibility in some of those areas. So another bill that was important locally, Senate Bill 7024, dealt with the State Board of Administration. This goes back to the local government surplus funds pool where the state invested those dollars and used to return significant returns on it until 2007, where there was a run on the bank. And when we tried to make the folks whole, and Lee County was a fairly major investor in that pool when it had the run on the bank, they passed a law that said they couldn't return the money except at 100% on par, and they never included language that allowed them to pay interest above returning all these investments back to par. So we actually got to the point where all of the investors were finally paid off, and there was a surplus for this Fund B of the investors that were damaged, and this bill allowed the interest to be paid and determined how that would be accomplished, and that was worth about $500,000 to you. That's one-time money, so that's not, recurring, it's not, for salaries, but it does help with reserves, and that was accomplished. Senate Bill 778 deals with local government construction preferences. If the state is providing more than 50% of the funds, they're saying you cannot provide local preferences anymore. You can provide preferences to state contractors that are within the state of Florida, but not contractors that have an office in Lee County or that do something else particular to Lee County, if the state is providing more than half the money. If the state is providing less than half the money, you can maintain local preferences if you have them. House Bill 41 dealt with hazardous walking conditions, and this was a very long and detailed bill about how the process for identifying hazardous walking conditions are conducted, and the requirements on the local government that may own the sidewalk or the road or the highway, and how they have to address this within their plan, or what they do if they're not going to address it within their plan, and ultimately what the school board responsibilities are as well. There are different roles that were added for the school board in this, but I would suggest to you that the vast majority of the work and the burden was more on the cities and counties, frankly, and so this is always going to be a difficult area. There's always going to be more traffic, more sidewalks needed, more drainage ditch issues and whatever than what can be funded, but the process is very well delineated in this bill, and we'll work through it over the next couple of years. So other bills that you might have an interest in, I wouldn't suggest that any of these are going to have a tremendous impact on the classroom, but things to be aware of. Senate Bill 290 dealt with concealed weapons during an evacuation. It's important to us because obviously we have many of the shelters. In essence, if a person legally owns a gun, but they don't have a concealed weapons permit, and they're ordered to evacuate, they're allowed to carry their gun in a concealed manner for a certain period of time after the evacuation is ended. So if the evacuation is ordered for 2 weeks, then they can carry in a concealed manner for that period of time plus a couple of days. House Bill 565 deals with the retirement system, and it says that FRS employers for the next 6 months and then every 5 years for a window are allowed to look at any positions that they've designated as senior management and reclassify them if they determine that they should be at a lower level. House Bill 7078 deals with child welfare, and the major provision in here is that if there's a death of a child that's in the Children and Family Services system, then school personnel are added to the teams that study what happened and why. Maybe not a responsibility we want, but one that we'll take. House Bill 7019 deals with workforce services, and essentially they're going to create a task force to look at the delivery of workforce services, and with the concept of having a major report and potentially a total overhaul of that area during the next session. Senate Bill 984 is an exemption from lobbying requirements if a legislator or a member of the executive branch, like the governor, asks to use one of your facilities for a public purpose, not a campaign purpose. We're allowed to give it to them, and we don't have to charge them rent as long as it's for a public purpose, and that's not deemed to be lobbying anymore because you're not allowed to provide any gifts to any of the exempt folks. Senate Bill 982 is it revises the Florida Civil Rights Act, and essentially we are adding pregnancy for students as being a situation that can't be discriminated against for educational purposes. And Senate Bill 954 deals with the involuntary examination of minors. When this bill was first filed, I was very concerned about it because it required school personnel, anytime a child was being involuntarily examined, to always call the parent, and there weren't exemptions for when the parent was believed to be the problem. They've revised all of those processes, and it's very close to probably what exists already, but now we're sticking it in a law instead of someone's policy. And this is something that our principals and guidance counselors probably need to really look at the details of. But in essence, when a child is Baker Acted or referred to Children and Family Services or others for review of cases of neglect or abuse, there's a process to notify the parent or guardian, except when when they're possibly the problem, and then there's the process for what you do in that as well. Those are the major things that we did. The one thing I'll point out as we look towards next year is the issues in some ways are setting up very similarly. There's every reason to believe that the state budget is going to be fairly healthy, with the exception of this continuing pressure on LIP and the continuing proposal on whether we want to accept federal dollars that are there for us to accept if we want them or reject them again. And so that whole healthcare thing sits exactly like it was last year, with the same stress and challenge. The overall budget is going to be healthy. All of the bills that died are likely to come directly back. So all of the education bills that were out there that failed merely because of the blow up are likely to be refiled and to quickly get back to where they were, and then we'll have to see what comes from there. So particularly, we're looking at the charter school capital outlay issue that the House was proposing and the liability that might exist there for you. And there was also a bill dealing with parental rights where, and particularly, we just need to make sure that that overlays with our controlled open enrollment plan and doesn't impede it. I believe that at the end of session, we had gotten that all cleaned up, but it'll come back and we'll have to see where that is. And so that's what we have.
Thank you.
Any questions? Ms. Dozier?
Not necessarily a question, but this was a rather interesting year because I don't think I don't remember in the history of my watching the House and Senate that anything like this has ever happened as far as the time being cut off. So I know that made for rather interesting work up in Tallahassee because some people went home, some people were there, and it was like somebody that I was talking to said it was like walking on eggshells. So hopefully y'all didn't crack too many of the eggs while you were walking around, and we just appreciate everything that you do for us and also making us aware of what we need to look out for. So thank you for that.
Fisher?
And I just have one clarification. What was the date the session finally ended?
June 20th.
Okay. And so any district evaluation systems have to be submitted by August the 1st this year?
No, the DOE has to have adopted the rules on how we do that.
Oh, okay.
It's not that ours will come later. It's coming, but it's not, we're not there yet.
Okay.
Sorry. That slide got a little small.
I just wanted to clarify that. It did get a little small. Thank you. And thank you very much for this. It's always very helpful, and we appreciate all you do for us on the front.
Okay, board members, I'd just like to add in 2 weeks, Mr. Sarah will be back down for the platform. This year was very, very unique with a lot of the negotiations in the House and the Senate being pretty much underwater, that we couldn't be part of or you know, when it was going on. So I think it was very, very critical that we had Mr. Sarah and that group up there continuing to work when they surfaced, because we weren't always sure when they would, to make things go forward. And I think it's more and more critical that we actually align with our consortium and with our board so that we have a concerted effort as far as what's important, because all the bills that died this time are going to be right back around coming up. And they're starting earlier, and it's going to be a lot more aggressive, I believe, this year than it was even last year. So, Mr. Sarah, you want to add any more to that?
We issued, Mr. Toiber issued a memo on the platform development for the district. I am going to be back in 2 weeks to workshop with you what you would like in your platform. Individually, if you want to talk to me about ideas that you individually have, I'll try to help you to research those and to understand them myself. But our staff should be submitting ideas to the superintendent, and any citizens that have items that are important to them should feel free to immediately let your board members know about them. We'll be bringing a discussion draft to the table in 2 weeks, and the deadlines for submitting items to the consortium and to FSBA are such that we'll need to work from that consensus document in order to get some of those items off in time. But you know, so it'll possibly be before you have fully adopted. But if we have some consensus, then we'll know what to submit to the other organizations.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Graham, do you have anything else to add?
I just want to thank Mr. Sarah because he keeps us abreast all along the way, you know, because you were in those phone conferences, and it's very helpful. It's always fascinating to me how things finally land. Mr. Martin has gone through all all the new laws that impact us, that we might need to change policy or update a document that we have, and we are working on that. So we'll gradually be bringing those compliance pieces back to you so that we are sure we're in compliance. The calendar, I probably need to hear from the board at some point. If you want to go with August 10th, we need to give the calendar committee some idea of where the board is on that. So when they meet, I know they talked about it last year, and if that's the actual date you want to begin, I'd like to have some input on that from you all as you think about it, so that I can share that with Dr. Pruitt and TALC folks and SPALC as we talk through the whole calendar, because that has to be negotiated. And I think the sooner we do that, the better, because the earlier we start, the shorter the summer will be.
Anything else, board members? Ms. Dozier, would you? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sarah. Moving on now to policy 2.28, charter schools. Dr. McCullers.
Earlier, we started the shorter the school year for the coming year,
Right. The shorter,
for the next summer.
Yeah.
But not forever.
no, just this one summer will
one
be shorter,
summer.
yeah.
All right, which would make a difference in the pay again for
yeah.
that coming year. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, they're going to really like it because if we check it. It's like to movie to happen to us.
Dr. McCullers, would you get your mic? Thank you.
You might
We
need to
there?
bring it closer to you.
Yes, now we
How's
are.
that?
Here we go.
Oh,
There.
that's better.
All right. We have some proposed changes to School Board Policy 2.28, and they are of two kinds. The first kind of change is about provision of student transportation, and the second kind is about some insurance requirements that we make of our charter schools. With me today, I have Ms. Bonnie McFarland and Ms. Kathy Richards from our Department of Insurance and Benefits Management to help us with the insurance section. As far as the transportation goes, we had an event last March where there was a fire on a school bus operated by a private company on behalf of a charter school. Charter schools use maybe 4 or 5 different methods of transporting students. Some have parents provide the transportation. Some provide their own transportation with buses they own or lease. Some use public transportation. And then the fourth category is where they hire a private company to provide the transportation for them. And that was a learning experience we had last March, because this was a case where the governing board of the school had hired a private company to provide the transportation service. There was a fire on the bus. Fortunately, there were no injuries, but we discovered in the follow-up to that the vendor and the governing board had different ideas about how those bus inspections had been performed, how those records were kept, and how they were going to be made available to the public. So, what the school was left with was being unable to demonstrate that they had reviewed those documents, which they explained that they had done. They were unable to provide them when they were requested in the public records request. So the school changed transportation providers pretty quickly, and what we now want to do is kind of clarify and codify some practices that we think that will prevent this ever being a problem again. So we propose some language that will make 4 new requirements of charter school governing boards in circumstances where they have a private provider. First, the changes will make it clear that the governing board is responsible for ensuring that student transportation is provided according to all statute, all state board rule, all administrative code, and it's their responsibility to ensure that it happens. They can't sell that responsibility to someone else. That includes specifically certification of school bus drivers and the inspection of school buses. Second, it would require the governing board to ensure that its private provider conducts those inspections, documents those inspections, makes those inspection documents available to the governing board and to anyone in the public should they ever be requested. This is to make sure that people have access to those and we have evidence that they're actually being done. Third, it would require the governing board to make a full transportation plan available to the school district before they implemented any student transportation. That kind of transportation plan would include a schedule of how they inspect buses, how they document where the records are kept, and they would provide that to us each year annually, or whenever they change it. And finally, it would make sure that the governing board required its private provider to carry automotive liability insurance and to submit documentation of that insurance to the school district. And we think that these 4 changes will protect everyone's interest, certainly protect student safety, and make it clear to charter schools what their responsibilities are as far as transportation goes. Do you have any questions about that portion of the proposal?
Thank you.
Dozier.
On page 20, well, here it is, where it says the charter school shall also provide sponsor written notice. Is that the school district? Who is the sponsor?
The sponsor is the school district. School board is the sponsor.
Well, I think we should put school board in there, or school district instead of sponsor, for clarification.
Yeah, okay, very good. We will do that.
It just makes it clear,
Yeah,
because I know we constantly have conversations with charter companies when they file stuff and give us their documents saying that they didn't understand things.
Exactly
So the
right.
clearer that we can be with them in their application and our policy, how we review those, I think would benefit us in the long run, because we can say, well, it was right there in black and white, so.
we'll certainly do that.
Also keeps it consistent in that paragraph.
Yes.
All right, the other set of changes really are about simplifying and clarifying the requirements we make for charter school insurance. Some of them, we replace some outdated references to forms, use more general forms so we can conform to what's currently available in the insurance marketplace, and just make it clearer for what the requirements are so it's clear for us to enforce. We can go through them or we can answer questions.
I have no question.
I have no questions.
Well done.
Pretty straightforward? All right. Thank you both. All right, thank you much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCullers. Next one, Mr. Mora, you have on the use of facilities pre-briefing, policy 9.05.
Yes, sir. Good morning, good afternoon, board members, Mr. Martin, Dr. Graham. For the record, Mark Mora, Director of the Planning Growth and School Capacity Department. My purpose here today is to share a proposed update to policy 9.05, the use of facilities. The purpose of the update is to coordinate and align the policy with the board's current interlocal agreement with both the Board of County Commissioners and the Parks and Recreation Departments. The update provides an option to waive any fees that might be incurred in that agreement, specifically when there is a benefit to the district, or when another governmental agency has entered an agreement with a reciprocal agreement of approximate equal value. This update also aligns with a revised interlocal agreement with the Board of County Commissioners that is forthcoming to your purview soon. That revised interlocal agreement strengthens the sharing relationship between the board and the Board of County Commissioners and Parks and Recreation. It ensures that we have equitable maintenance and renovation of facilities that we share. It also ensures equitable utilization by both organizations. It also mitigates the administrative costs and time in maintaining these interlocal agreements. It also clarifies language and potentially alleviates addendums or separate interlocals. We've had many interlocals and many addendums to the current interlocal when new facilities are developed both here in the district and in the county. And I want to stress that the updated policy and the interlocal agreement that we're bringing forth will not increase the shared maintenance expenses for either organization.
Any questions, Board? Thank you, Ms. Moore.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now we have our Business and Finance, Dr. Morris, with our district procurement processes.
This is a presentation that's been ready for some time, and it's been pushed back because of other things, but this was at the request of the board to fully understand our procurement process. When it came up, why we piggyback and do some of the things we do when it comes to proposals.
Good afternoon, board members, Dr. Graham, Mr. Martin. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this afternoon. My name is Susan Millay, and I am the Director of Procurement Services. And I have prepared for you today a presentation. Actually, I submitted it to you in advance for your review. And so I'll go through it quickly today to highlight a few things that will hopefully assist you in understanding the many, many procurement board agenda items that come before you and some of the nuances about them. So the procurement department's mission is to assist our schools and departments with purchasing items at a low cost and in compliance with government's rules and regulations. There are 4 tiers of regulations with which we comply. And the statutes are kind of at the top, and then Department of Education, our school board policy, and our internal policies and procedures guide these purchases. Currently, our purchasing threshold set by school board policy is $25,000. So any competitive solicitation that goes out, is this not projecting onto the
It is down
screen?
here.
It is here for us,
Not up
but
there.
not out
You?
here.
Okay, it's not projecting up on the screen here, Amity. Okay, I'll continue on. Yay, there we go. So the current board purchasing policy is that the threshold of $25,000 is the requirement for any competitive solicitation to come before the board for recommended action. I'll catch up to some of those slides later. As I said, I'm going to give you just a quick overview. One of the primary responsibilities of our department, and something we take great pride in, is our vendor outreach. We have multiple ways that we reach out to the business community and connect with our vendors. Our most important tool in our toolkit is the district website, and it provides a wealth of information at one click from the procurement site, or just 2 clicks from the district's home page. So right on the district's main page is a Business with the District icon. It used to be called Doing Business with the District. Hopefully you've been able to see our new look and feel of our newly launched district-wide website. I want to give a shout out to the communications department, and in particular Laura Howard, for making that go live a reality, and for working closely with our department to post our many pages of information, because many other business units, business members of the community, and school districts and agencies use our website to gather purchasing information. Here's a quick snapshot of how it's so easy to traverse, right down to Every competitive solicitation issued, who it's awarded to, what the current prices we're paying, and when bids are up for bid. So this is a 24/7 access for our vendor community to find out what it is we're buying, as well as register for making those purchases with us. Another thing that we do and take pride in is we can have co-chaired the Reverse Trade Show for our community. We've hosted it this year in our facilities here. I've been the co-chair for the past 2 years, and we had the largest ever vendor turnout this year. So we're very proud of that outreach, and we walk vendors through registering and explain the commodities we're purchasing. We also provide legislative updates on recent changes that would be of interest. A question that we're asked frequently and something that we stay on top of is, so where does our money go? How are our purchases affecting our local businesses and beyond? So each year we track these metrics. You'll see a 3-year set of data here that represents over the past 3 years, we've pretty consistently spent 40% of all competitive purchase orders in Lee County, and almost 50% if you add in Charlotte and Collier County. Within the state of Florida, approximately 80% of our competitively solicited dollars are spent with Florida businesses. So that's kind of a snapshot of where our money's going. An important thing to know about the solicitation types that come before you for your vote are the difference between a bid and an RFP. By law, a bid is required that the responsive vendor with the best price wins. There's no negotiation, so when bids are received, we need to bring forward to you and recommend to you that you award to the lowest priced bid. That's per the statute. We have a lot more leniency with RFPs and ITNs, and so when we bring those forward to you, we've already gone through an evaluation process with publicly advertised and vetted criteria, and we've negotiated a best and final offer. You often see a lot of piggybacks and collaborative bids and consortium bids that we bring forward, and it's important to realize that this is an industry best practice to use piggybacks and collaborative bids. It is actually a metric that is measured by the National Institute for Government Purchasing, and it's a metric that we track. And I'll talk a little bit more about why collaborative purchasing is a best practice. The Florida statutes actually recently required school districts to belong to purchasing consortiums and entertain collaborative bidding. The bottom line is the higher the volume of items serviced, the lower the price. So aggregating our expenditures is in the best interest of all of us. One of the things that we do is we make sure that when we, as a member of these other consortiums that we participate in, when bids are coming out and we're asked to participate, sometimes we take the lead, sometimes we are an active participant, but in all cases, we provide our vendor lists of vendors who serve us to other school districts so that our vendors have the opportunity to bid on bids issued by the Bay Area school districts. The bottom line is the low price is going to win the straight bids, and we are seeking opportunities for our vendors to bid on other county and other school district opportunities that we might then piggyback. Similarly, when we bring forward to the board bids that we have issued, other school districts piggyback ours. So there's a lot of working together with other school districts and other government agencies. I also wanted to reflect that state contracts and other things, even national contracts, we have local vendors awarded on those. Some examples on the state contract, we have Barry's Gravely, and we have Creel, we have the local Goodyear firm and Walters Automotive are awarded bids on the state contract. And one of the national contracts I can think of is J.M. Todd of Fort Myers is awarded on the Fairfax County, Virginia copiers and printers contract. So our vendors are looking out of our county, and other counties and school districts are looking for us for purchases. One of the things I'm sure that you're interested in is the cost to do business. What does it cost when we're bringing forward bids and RFPs to you? On the low end, about $1,700 to issue a kind of widget bid that we've done before and we can reuse, and we have a well-developed vendor list, and limited research is required. Those bids cost on the low end about $1,700. When we have expansive committees, expansive interviews and evaluations and legal reviews of contracts that are required, a bid can go up to $11,500 or $12,000. So that's the total cost of ownership for issuing a bid, and that's another reason that the statutes encourage collaborative bidding, and that we look to do that as well, because it reduces our costs if we don't have as many bids that we process as the lead agency. Our ratio of bids that we issue versus that are issued by or piggybacked or collaboratively bid by other agencies, it's a 70-30 split. We're issuing about 70% of our bids, about 140 bids a year. We write, process, award, and bring forward, and about 40 bids a year we're piggybacking or collaborating with other agencies on. I'd like to take a minute to introduce my team. I am very proud of this group of highly productive, we're a group of 10, and they're here on your right, and I just got to say, I can't say enough about them in terms of the teamwork and camaraderie and professionalism that they all exude when we work together. We are cross-trained on everything that we do. We have process documents for all of our tasks, and we are very, very focused on process improvement and embracing technology to streamline our efforts. And we think we do a pretty good job for the district, and we're proud of our work. I've talked to you a lot about the business community and how we reach out and connect with them, but it's important for me to convey to you that the most important customer for us is the student and the school. So the school bookkeeper assigned to each school, there's one bookkeeper per school. Only one person can purchase every single thing in that school. So I say they're on an island, and we are their life preserver, because we train them when they come in, we mentor them throughout the year, we help establish all of the bids and put them in place so that they can buy. And then there's step 2, which is supporting our bookkeepers through the entire purchasing process, helping them get the best competitive analysis done that they can, looking for new bids that they might need, or writing new bids that they might need, and then working through the purchasing process, the distribution of purchase orders. Every single purchase made in this district is processed by our department. 25,000 purchases a year, 500 P cards for individuals, and on top of the 200 bids that we're managing. So that's a pretty high volume of work that we're putting out, and I'm again proud to be part of the team that's delivering that.
I have a question. How do you complete the loop if a procurement, you're buying on a piggyback bid, so you're getting product, and the product is faulty or less than adequate? If you're a part of that service, how do you get the fact your customers, your bookkeepers, your schools now have an inferior product? So they have to go through the process of getting it corrected. How do we get that data, that information back, so it becomes part of the process and criteria? So when you're buying something again, you don't just keep buying junk from junk suppliers. In other words, how do we get back that loop, that feedback loop, based upon with a piggyback system?
Right, that's a great question. We treat piggybacks just like we treat our own bids. So we have a bid folder for every bid that we issue. We also create a bid folder for every piggyback that we use, and it has all the same data, including the terms and conditions, And we review those terms and conditions before we will piggyback it, because if there's not a method for us to get a replacement product at no charge, then it might not be a bid that we would piggyback. The question you're asking also has a broader concept of purchasing in general, and how do we track how do we respond when we're not getting quality products. So we have, in our warehouse, we store items and we send out surveys, and we have a form that asks, how are these pencil sharpeners doing for you guys? And when we hear bookkeepers who are very vocal about products, and they're very, very tight with their budgets, our bookkeepers are awesome, I gotta tell you. They share with us, this isn't working, and that's when our team gets involved. We're the go-between. We are the contract administrators as well as the purchasing agents. We are if the bookkeeper escalated and it wasn't resolved satisfactorily, we go back to the contract. We're contacting the office. We've had that result in closer relationships as well as terminated relationships based on how vendors will work with us. So our team works with the bookkeepers to make sure that any defective product is replaced at no cost to the district or resolved in an equitable way. Okay, I guess the last couple of things I just wanted to say is we very much embrace best practices. We are on top of the nationally published government purchasing metrics that we use to validate that the processes we're doing are in line with the quality that's expected for government purchasing agencies, because the government is a huge purchasing agent, and we can drive quality and pricing by uniting and collaborating and following standards together. At the local, regional, state, and national levels, we're participating in collaboration. We are looking to increase automation in our processes. We're in the process of developing an online bidding so that we can receive bids online rather than in paper. And we're looking at reverse auctions, which is a new technology whereby instead of submitting bids, there's an online auction and people vote down and they go below the price. It's a reverse auction. So those are some of the technologies that we're evaluating and continue to evaluate. So with that, I'd like to ask if there are any questions about the purchasing process, or if there are any suggestions that you might have that you would like us to look into.
Ms. Dozier.
Well, I just want to say, when I looked over this presentation prior to coming to this meeting, I was extremely impressed with the professionalism in which it was put together. So I want to commend you and your department on that. Great job on that.
Thank you.
And, I mean, it was truly top-notch, and I know that when we have people from our district, our employees that are presenting to us, sometimes when you put stuff together, you wonder how the board's going to react to it. Well, if we were setting standards, this would definitely be a standard to put out there as
Thank you.
one to model by, because it was extremely well done, and also it was very understandable, and I couldn't find any mistakes in it, and I always look for mistakes, so that's really
Thank you very much. I appreciate your
accolades
feedback.
to your entire team, so good job. But one question I do have, I know that when we have a bid that goes out, we have an agreement, which is an agreement that we as board members have to abide by, everybody has to abide by. At some point, I know you didn't cover it today, but I think that might be something good to refresh us on, because sometimes we don't have the understanding of exactly, if something's out there being bid on, about talking to that vendor and so forth. So I just think that, I know there's been questions about that in the past, and I just think at some point that might be something good for all of us to get a refresher course on.
Okay, great. I will talk with Dr. Graham and see how she'd like me to present that information in the future.
Ms. LaRiviere, then Ms. Fisher.
Yeah, just a real quick, to back up what Ms. Dozier was saying, What I loved were the notes in your PowerPoint presentation that we got to see, and that, I think, is one of the parts that made it so understandable, because we weren't just looking at a PowerPoint, we had other information there. So thank you for that, and I do concur. We never have to worry about our bookkeepers not telling us what they think. I've worked with many, and they are all very verbal, and they are all very protective of that money to guard it
Absolutely.
well.
Ms. Fisher?
And as they should be. Not to be redundant, but when I reviewed this, I did what I usually do. I had a piece of paper with my question marks on it. And literally, this format answered all my questions before I could even ask them. So again, kudos to you because this, and your team, because this is great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Morgan?
Yeah, well, I will simply say that when Ms. Millay presented this to the Finance Advisory Committee, she took a little bit longer to do it, and their mouths dropped. She is such an awesome representative of the quality of people we have in the district and the quality of work being done in the district. She is just, they were just so impressed by her work. I do want to remind the board that when she presented to the Finance Advisory Committee, they then came to us with a recommendation that we raise the procurement level that we currently have in policy from $25,000 to $50,000. And so keep this in mind. I think, Mr. Martin, we talked about when this policy was coming forward and that we would discuss that amendment at the time that we reviewed that particular policy. Am I correct?
That certainly can be done. It's Chapter 6.
Oh, so that's a ways away. Maybe we want to consider bringing that one forward sooner, just to get it done.
Nice.
Anyway.
Thank you. And for the public's edification, the report that was presented today was just a touching of the points on the highlight bulletins. The background information that the other board members were referring to was the statutory references, the code, the procedures, the processes that the purchasing people actually adhere to, that is pretty in-depth and answered a lot of our questions that were not covered today because it was so voluminous that was actually presented to us ahead of time. So I just wanted to make sure that this report was very comprehensive, and I concur with my board members, and it's a great job. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, at that point now, we're going to move over, change tunes a little bit, go from purchasing, go over to our, Dr. Pruitt with our Affordable Care Act overview.
Afternoon, board members, Dr. Graham. Just before these folks leave, I just want to echo as a former school principal what an outstanding job they do. I had to transition with a new bookkeeper 1 year, and they were wonderfully supportive and did a great job, so thank you. This afternoon, we're here to provide you with a requested overview of the Affordable Health Care Act and the implications that has on us as a district. And I believe that all of you have had the opportunity before to meet Tammy Martin and Debbie Poole from Aon Hewitt, and I'm going to turn it right over to them to provide you the overview.
Thank you, Dr. Pruitt. My name is Debbie Poole. I am from Aon. We're here to give you an update on the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, also known as the ACA. Today we're intending to talk a little bit about the benefits and coverage changes that were mandated between the years of 2011 and 2014. We're also going to review the fees and taxes that are impacting the district within their medical plan, and also go through some of the mandates in the administration that have been called upon through this administrative act. So in the first section, just talking about some of the new requirements put forth by the Act. Of course, the ACA will impact employer-sponsored group health plans. The impact of the changes and the actions will vary by the types of medical plan, whether it is self-insured, or whether it is based on the employer size, or whether or not the plan itself has a grandfathered status. The Affordable Care Act applies to any groups over 50 employees. It's projected that medical plans with a modest impact will see a cost impact between 2% and 5% through 2014. We've estimated the impact to the school district of Lee County claims between $1.4 and $3.5 million with respect to the plan design changes that were mandated within the Affordable Care Act. Some of those mandates are on the following page. They go by year. They sort of eased us into some of the changes that were required through the Act 1 year at a time. The first to come through was in 2011. I'm on page 3 now. Oops. The first piece in 2011 came down that dependents must be covered up to age 26 regardless of full-time student status. Annual limits or lifetime dollar limits were no longer permitted under any medical plan covering essential health benefits. Pre-existing condition limitations were no longer permitted for individuals under the age of 19, and preventive care was now mandated to be covered at 100%. In 2013, the new changes included expansion into women's preventive services, requiring women's preventive services, including contraceptives, to be covered with no cost sharing to all covered adult women under the plan. In 2014, cost sharing limitations came with out-of-pocket maximums. In-network out-of-pocket maximums could no longer exceed $6,350 for individuals or $12,700 for family in 2014. Those limits will be adjusted each year. The 2015 limit amounts are $6,600 for an individual and $12,200 for family coverage. Sorry, $13,200. Inverted there. Lastly, in 2014, coverage for clinical trials must be covered, and the plans must cover routine patient costs related to clinical trials. Furthermore, in 2014, all of the medical plans must meet actuarial value by providing 60% coverage. Medical plans must cover essential health benefits. That's the core package of health care services that must be covered without annual or lifetime benefits limits. The essential health benefit core package must cover 10 broad categories of care, including emergency services, maternity and newborn care, hospital services, doctor services, mental health and substance abuse care, prescription drug and preventive care services. It also includes ambulatory care, pediatric services, lab and rehabilitative services as well. The Affordable Care Act requires all plans to allow members into the plan with no more than a 90-day waiting period. So any plan that is imposing longer than a 90-day waiting period will no longer be compliant. And then in 2014, pre-existing limitations were lifted for all members regardless of age. Fees. So the first fee I'd like to talk about is the PCORI fee. PCORI is an acronym for the Patient-Centered Outcomes and Research Institute. That fee is due each year by July 31st. Self-insured plans must pay that directly to the IRS. That fee is $1 per member per year for the first year and increases to $2 per member per year and is indexed to inflate with inflation through 2019. The estimated PCORI fee for the school district of Lee County in 2014 was based on 11,736 members and was $11,736. In 2015, that fee will be based on 11,349 members, totaling $22,699. The next fee that impacts your plan is the transitional reinsurance fee. The transitional reinsurance fee is imposed both on health insurance issuers and self-insured group plans for the years 2014 through 2016. So this is a short-term fee associated with the Affordable Care Act that is also assessed on a per capita basis. The purpose of that transitional reinsurance fee is to stabilize the insurers that are participating in the marketplace exchange during the transition in the first 3 years in the event of losses due to adverse selection. So we've broken out the 2014 and 2015 payments per person. They can be paid in 2 installments. For 2014, the fee that was paid in 2015 for the School District of Lee County was $717,578. The 2015 estimated total fee will be $504,000 due in 2016 in January. Taxes. So the taxes are Medicare contribution tax. This one doesn't actually apply to the School District of Lee County because there is no matching employer payment on the FICA. But this Medicare contribution tax does impose an additional FICA tax of 0.9% applicable to wages in excess of $200,000 annually. Because there is no matching employer payment on the FICA, there is no impact to the School District of Lee County. So the last and most controversial tax is the excise tax. This is also affectionately referred to as the Cadillac tax. The excise tax is starting in 2018 and will impact what's referred to as a high-cost employer medical plan. Insurers, including employers of a self-insured plan like the School District of Lee County, will pay 40% in excise tax on the aggregate value of the portion of the employer-sponsored insurance in excess of the thresholds. The thresholds have been set based on your active employees and post-Medicare retirees. In 2018, that threshold for an individual is $10,200 for single coverage, $27,500 for family coverage. For those members participating in your plan that are pre-Medicare retirees in 2018, those thresholds are a bit higher at $11,850 for single, $30,950 for family. The excise tax is indexed. Those thresholds are indexed based on the Consumer Price Index, plus 1% in 2019 only. Those thresholds are adjusted based on the the Federal Employee Health Benefit Plan based on the Blue Cross Blue Shield standard benefit option for federal employees. So if their increase is more than 55% between the years of 2010 and 2018, then we can expect the threshold to be adjusted upward. That translates to an annual effective trend of about 5.6%. The excise tax itself is non-tax deductible. The coverage that is subject to tax includes medical, your medical plan, your health care flexible spending account, or HRA, which is a health reimbursement account, and the employer and employee contributions into a health savings account. So the tax is calculated based on not just your medical plan, but also your health care flexible spending and your health savings accounts. When we estimate the current excise tax, we're using the current plans titled as the 3769, the 5773, and the high deductible health plans that are currently being offered to active and retirees. Again, the benefits that are included in that calculation are your medical and prescription drug plans, employer clinics, which you do not have one at this time, but if you had one, the value of that clinic would have to be included in your excise tax. Health savings account contributions, which have begun this year. Flexible spending account contributions, which are already in place. And self-insured dental or vision plans. Today, the school district has fully insured dental and vision plans, so those particular plans are not included in the excise tax calculation. On the next page, we have listed a summary of the results based on our illustrative example. So we are calculating that based on what we know today, based on the current plans today, the contributions made today, the projected plans as they stand right now. The plan 3769 is forecasted to reach the excise tax in 2019. Plan 5773 will reach it in 2022, and the high deductible health plan will reach it in 2028. The present value of that excise tax for a 10-year total between 2018 and 2027 is approximately $6.84 million. That number, again, is an estimate based on the plans as they exist today, with the benefits in place as they are today, and the thresholds set without adjustment. There is an additional 35% tax liability in the event that your third-party administrator were to pass on that additional increase on their side back to the district. If that rolls in, then the additional tax liability and the present value of that, including the excise tax and the tax liability, that 10-year present value is $10.5 million. So on the next page, we have sort of spread that out by plan, stretching that. You can see from left to right, the 2018 estimated coverage cost. We break that out by non-FSA participants and FSA participants. We do that because we must include the contributions made into their flexible spending accounts into the calculation. You'll see the 3769 plan hits it in 2019, as we've mentioned prior. The 5773 will reach the threshold in 2022, and the high deductible health plan will reach it in 2028. Mandates and administration, in addition to the projected costs that we've already reviewed, the Affordable Care Act does require certain administrative mandates for employers. Employers with more than 100 full-time employees or full-time equivalents must offer essential health benefits to all full-time employees and their dependent children. The plan must cover full-time employees, which is defined by the Affordable Care Act as employees working over 30 hours a week. According to the Affordable Care Act, you must offer minimum essential coverage or pay $2,000 per employee, less the first 30 in the count. As an employer with over 100 employees, you must offer coverage that is of minimum value and affordable. If your plan is determined to be unaffordable, then the district could be in a penalty of $3,000 for any individual who goes to the exchange and qualifies for a federal subsidy. So that $3,000 penalty would only be imposed if an individual were not offered affordable coverage by the district, went out to the federal marketplace, and did receive a federal subsidy. Affordable coverage with essential health benefits must be offered to all full-time employees. That's based on single coverage tier only. That affordability test is based on a federal poverty level and applies as 9.5% of the single tier household income. As many found out this year when they filed their taxes, there is an individual mandate that began last year for any individuals that did not carry health insurance in 2014. They incurred a penalty for not carrying health insurance. In 2014, that penalty was the lesser of $95 or 1% of the household income. In 2015, that will go up to either 2% or $325, whichever is greater. And in 2016, that goes up to $695 or 2.4%, whichever is greater. So you'll see that individual mandate penalty also increasing. Additionally, as a self-insured medical plan, you are required to have a health plan identifier. This HPID is a 10-digit unique identifier that is used to streamline electronic transactions between the carriers and sponsored agencies, health professionals, financial institutions, etc. You are also required to provide a one-time notice to all employees of the presence of the health exchange. They can also be provided to new hires as you onboard new teachers throughout the year. W-2 reporting has been in place since 2012. Employers have been required to report the total value of your medical benefits on the W-2. You've seen that produced on your own W-2s then for the last several years. That will continue. Self-insured employers are required to report the COBRA value less the 2% administrative fee. The last piece with respect to the administration is the employer reporting. The employer, as a self-insured plan, you are required to file Form 1094C with the IRS. That 1094C verifies and confirms with the IRS that you are a plan sponsor, you're an applicable large employer, and that you are offering essential health benefits to all of your full-time employees. That is a single form that goes directly to the IRS. To comply with the enrollment and minimum essential coverage requirement, you are also required to send each employee a separate 1095C. That 1095C form indicates to the individual what months of the year in which they were eligible for coverage, what months of the year they were carrying coverage. It also includes the name of their dependents, also covered by the plan, their date of birth, their social security numbers, their months of coverage. It's quite a detailed form. That's only one section of the ruling. That's section code 6055. That's part of the law that says you're required to enroll in the minimum essential coverage. The second code, 6056, is that it's offered minimum essential coverage and it's affordable. So those are also used on the same forms, 1094C to the IRS, 1095C to the employees. Those must be filed and mailed to all the employees by the end of January, if you're filing that electronically. We do not know the total cost impact to the district because this is all administration. This is all being done in-house to find the solution. So in addition to all the fees that are directly being paid out of the funds from the plan, the additional costs that the district will incur with respect to abiding by and complying with the law through the reporting requirements is not yet known. You haven't had to do it before, so we're not really sure how long it's going to take to finish programming that. So I know that's being worked on internally. And then the last slide, just to illustrate what it might look like if the school district were to no longer offer health benefits to their employees. We do a calculation to show what it would save the district if you were to choose to opt out of offering medical coverage. So this illustration is basically what it looks like as a savings of $42 million by not offering your medical plan to any employees. Okay. Currently
paying the current penalty.
and paying the penalty of $2,000 per individual. So this is the cost of paying $2,000 for every individual that's being that's full-time working in the district, and not collecting currently the contributions that you're getting today on your medical plan. So the savings is basically the net of that.
So when you look at it from a fiscal standpoint and not our staff standpoint, it looks like, oh, the smart thing to do is for us not to do anything and let everybody just go to the marketplace. What a shame. This is going to become more and more expensive as it goes along. And please understand, I'm not saying that would want to do that at all. But it's going to be a very fine line we're going to have to walk as we are trying to negotiate just exactly what we're able to do for our staff. And those days of what we were able to do long ago, I believe, are gone.
We anticipate that $2,000 penalty will increase. The Affordable Care Act depends largely on employers staying in and offering coverage, and so once if employers start to come out of the marketplace and plan to opt out, we expect that penalty will increase exponentially, so that it is not favorable for the employer to opt out.
Good.
Board members?
Questions on what we talked about so far?
If we were not self-insured and we didn't opt out, are there opportunities for cooperative insurance plans with other large agencies? Do you know what I'm saying? Does that?
If you are fully insured versus self-insured, all of the fees that we went through and all of the taxes, they would be built into your fully insured rate. So instead of you paying that directly to the IRS on your own behalf, you have an insurer building that into your fees somehow. It's not as transparent because we do the calculation for you based on your point in time. With respect to two of the fees, there are different ways of calculating the methodology, and we of course always calculate that for the district in the most fiscally advantageous way.
Okay, so that would not be an advantage then? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Good
Thank
job.
you.
Awesome. Yeah.
Kind of blows you
Ms. Robry, teaching and learning, our middle school and high school programs of student progression plans.
Good afternoon. Thank you, board members. I'm Soretta Ralph, Teaching and Learning Assistant Superintendent. Also, thank you, Mr. Martin and Dr. Graham. With me is Mrs. Robry and Mrs. Brooks, and we are here today to talk to you about the high school and middle school program of studies and also the student progression plan. And also, just as a reminder, the student progression plan is somewhat simply put a roadmap to show the students and parents the courses that they can take as they are attempting their succession of courses to graduate. And the program of studies will identify those courses, provide descriptions and information that will help the parents and the students better understand what those courses are made of. And now Mrs. Robry and Mrs. Brooks will give you more details of a short revision. Good afternoon, board members, Dr. Grant. This year, we looked at making sure the academic policies and courses included in the middle school and high school program of studies are aligned to the state course code directory, as well as our new focus scheduling system. As required by House Bill 7069, intensive courses as requirements have been, that language has been removed. The intensive courses remain as options in the program of studies to give schools opportunities to provide and meet student remediation needs. The middle school wheel courses have been daggered or designated for deletion in the state course code directory. Generally, when courses are daggered or designated for deletion, we find out about that a couple of years in advance, so we knew that this was coming down the path. What the state has approved quite a few new semester courses for the middle school level, and those have been included in our program of studies to kind of fill the gap of those courses that were covered under the middle school wheel courses. One of the things that we're really excited about with our middle school and high school program of studies this year are curriculum subject course progressions for each one of our core areas. So they are able to, and those have been added to the program of studies, to assist in student course placement. So we can continue to improve the consistency of the courses and the progressions as they're offered in our district. And so we're pleased to have added those to the middle school and high school program of studies.
And as we move into the student progression plan, a lot of what you will hear echoes what Mr. Sarah and Mrs. Robry have already discussed regarding changes as a result of House Bill 7069. So as you already have heard, the term remediation and the mandatory remediation requirements have been lifted, and the language in House Bill 7069 actually removed the term remediation, and it was replaced by intensive instruction. Therefore, we've updated the student progression plan to mirror that language. In addition, House Bill 7069 also eliminated the mandatory PERT testing in high school for potential placement into college preparatory courses during high school. The district will, of course, continue to offer PERT testing to students who elect to take advantage of this opportunity, because as you heard earlier, PERT has many benchmark uses for our students who elect to take it. In addition, and on an annual basis, we updated the high school graduation requirement charts for each 9th grade cohort, and additional language regarding students with disabilities earning high school standard diploma was added as we received additional guidance from the Department of Education through technical assistance. Are there any questions?
Ms. Morgan?
I don't have questions, I just have a couple comments. First of all, Dr. Graham was very responsive to all of my questions. As a non-educator, it's hard to work your way through this and really understand what's going on, but she did a great job. Who wrote the descriptions for the courses?
All of the course descriptions come from CPOMS,
Oh.
so they are all from the state. We have aligned all of our course descriptions.
Well, they have hired a better writer, because I think the course descriptions are much improved. I was going to compliment staff, so I hate to
We
compliment
would like
this.
to take credit for those,
would
but
I hate to
that
compliment-
would be honest. They're all from CPOMS.
Okay.
But that is one of the things that we did this year, is we went through and we looked at all of the course descriptions to make sure they were aligned, so everything is exactly the same.
I also thought it was terrific that we're moving into courses for early childhood education. I know from having been on the board for the Head Start, Policy Council, you know, that there is an enormous need, and I'm glad to see that internally we're taking steps to address that need. And then the last thing I would like to say, and this probably has to do with this Department of Education or CPOMS, whatever, but I thought the health ed revision was, you know, terrific. So anyway, I learned a lot reading it. Thank you all for your work.
Thank you.
Ms. Dozier?
I have a little bit of a different take. Is somebody going to typeset this, or is this the way it's going to be printed?
No, once the revisions are accepted, then we will make sure that it is all formatted in the appropriate way. This is the way it comes out when we show you the edits that are made.
Okay.
So it will have a much more formal presentation when the summary of changes is accepted.
Okay. I was hoping you would say that, because I saw several things where there was like a lag from one page to the other and so forth. And I think when we're putting out a document and spending this much on something and it's going to be in the hands of every parent, we need it to be as professional, because we are actually an education center. So
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
glad that was the answer that you gave me. Thank you. So I look forward to seeing the final draft.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank
Ms.
you very
Larrabee?
much.
Just a quick question. And this mostly comes because I was meeting with a parent this last week, and we were looking at the current pupil progression plan and going through the wonderful parent portal on the new website. It really is going to be great. She was saying, gee, it's great that they show the specifics for the high school as far as what's offered and what's different from other high schools. And mentioned it would be nice if we could do something similar at the middle school level. So I'm just throwing that out there. That was something that I heard, and I thought, makes sense if somebody's trying to make some decisions, if they have a place they go to look at. So
We could
a
certainly
thought.
look at that for the future.
that's not a directive, that's just,
Thank you for
just
that
sharing.
suggestion. Thank you. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
This concludes our informational briefing. We now will move down to board comments. We'll start with you, Ms. Fisher.
Okay, thank you. I'll be brief today. Okay, well, it's here somewhere. Thanks to everyone for the policy changes and the updates on all the things on the agenda today. Tonight's agenda includes a request for approval for several grants which are going to benefit our students, and I noted that several of those grants have a focus on health and wellness, and, you know, I believe that kids who are healthy and feeling good and are ready to learn, along with our staff feeling good, is important. And I want to congratulate Calusa Middle School for getting a grant that they have in collaboration with Cape Coral Hospital. And they're going to have a fitness center on site. So when Dr. Cole announced it, she said, "Get your workout clothes ready." And I said, "Okay, I will." I do have an opportunity to be a liaison with the Lee County Coalition for a Drug-Free Southwest Florida, and I probably talk about it at every meeting. But we are getting ready for the October 10th 5K Run for Prevention, and it supports Drug House Odyssey, which entertains our fifth graders, and it also works for prevention for families in Lee County. So I want to encourage everyone to go to their website, Drug Free Southwest Florida, and sign up, get teams together, and there are sponsorship opportunities. And if my colleagues agree, I'd like to ask Dr. Graham if we could have Ms. Chandler advertise this on the website so that our families can participate along with other people in the community. And it'll be taking place at Florida Gulf Coast University, which is a great venue, and the cause is important for us. I also was able to attend the Learning for Life kickoff meeting last Saturday morning from 9 to 1. Thanks, Ms. Dozier. And Learning for Life, as we know, is a character ed program. It's state-funded, and at no cost to the district, offers a user-friendly, standards-aligned curriculum, online access to anti-bullying and substance prevention abuse programs. And I'd like to encourage our schools and our principals to take advantage of the opportunity to engage in this program, which the data shows has had a positive impact on not only social behavior, but academic achievement. A special thanks to the many community members who replied to our plea for membership on our board advisory committees. We got kind of an unprecedented number, and so I want to thank all those people, and to everyone who has served on our advisory boards. Your input is valuable, and we are grateful and continue to encourage people to become involved. The more voices we hear, the better decisions we can make. And lastly, I want to say welcome back to our teachers and staff. A special welcome to our new employees. You've joined a team of amazing people, and you have an opportunity not only to form new relationships, but to make a difference in the lives of children. And that's all I have today. Thank you.
Ms. Dozier.
Thank you. When Mr. Sarah was talking, he said that in the future, we will be able to use paras as long for pull-out when there's testing in the event that there are small groups of students and so forth. I hope that we would have a caveat with that, and that would be that there would be some type of training for all of those paras before they are allowed to do any type of training. Also, I think that this Senate Bill 954, the involuntary examination of minors, I think that's something that we need to make sure that we need to have some communication piece to notify the principals and the guidance counselors that they need to be fully aware of that, very well read on it, so that we won't have any snags or anything like that. And I want to address you. Thank you for coming and speaking today. I know there's been a lot of information out there in a lot of different places, and I will tell you that I recognized a year ago in June May or June, that this was going to be a problem this year, because I knew anytime you change calendars, and when I heard, I looked real funny when Dr. Graham talked about, the change of calendars for next year. Well, next year, it won't matter if we if we give teachers a shorter summer, because that means they'll be getting more pay. But last year, I remember having a meeting with Dr. Graham and some union members, and I knew at the time that this was going to create a problem. I did not anticipate that it was going to be as big of a problem as it turned out to be, but I knew that it was going to be a problem. And I have expressed to Dr. Graham that I was most concerned about. I understand that our y'all are not imbeciles, and I understand that being a teacher myself at one time, you are so busy, you're so inundated with a lot of different things, and timing is so very important. And when we sent out emails during the time, y'all were testing, y'all were involved in so many other things that it's one more email from downtown, and Dr. Graham and I have had the conversation about when there's something that is of this importance, that we've got to do something like alert, SOS, you have to read this, or something to identify a piece of information that is that critical and that important that can affect your life, so that you can actually have that information, because it is critical to people being able to have their lights turned on, people being able to pay their their house payments and car payments and so forth. And I will tell you, I don't know if you have spoken with anybody here at the district as far as the pay and everything that happened. I think I have an understanding of what happened, but you said today that you made me think that may not be exactly accurate. Because I do understand that in that last check, if we took out all of the insurance premiums from the August paycheck, that would have been taken out for the August paycheck, because you've got to have your premiums, then that certainly created, I know what the premiums cost, especially those people that are with families, so I know that was a tremendous decrease in that check. And that was it was my understanding that was the difference. So if there's somebody tonight that's coming to bring us some additional information, I look forward to hearing it. And I know it doesn't do any good for us to sit here and say that we, I don't know how what we could have done to, besides the clarification piece, if in fact it was just because the money was taken out of the checks and the payment for the checks were there, but they had to be covered for their hospital insurance for the month of August. So if there's something different than that, I'm looking forward to hearing it. So thank you for raising that level of awareness for us. And I am certainly, in fact, I can't tell you how much this has affected me personally, because I have felt for the many teachers that I have talked to about this, and I know where they're coming from, and I know what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck, and it's just horrible that our teachers have had to face this. So I'm sorry for whatever that's worth.
Thank you, Ms. Dozier. Ms. Morgan?
Yes, a couple of things. First of all, and I read this a while ago, but I believe that FSBA has changed its policy with respect to the liaison appointed to represent the district on the executive board, correct? Normally, we do the appointment in November, but because they're on a June cycle now, they ask that we affirm the liaison.
Was it the legislative liaison? I got the legislative liaison, I thought. Isn't that what it was?
Isn't that what I said?
I thought you said the board of directors.
Okay.
I
Okay.
remember getting something about the legislative liaison.
Okay, right. So I just wanted to say that we need to affirm, because it's going to be rolled over effective June, we need to affirm the existing appointments or need to have a conversation about appointments. So, question, what do you want to do? My assumption is personally just roll it over.
Roll over the representative for the FSBA?
You're talking about the representatives for the legislative liaison. Is that what you're talking about?
No. I'm talking about the FSBA, and maybe I should just wait until tonight and clarify it and pull the memo. But I understood it to be our liaison to the board
of directors
for FSBA. Yes.
Okay.
And because they're changing their bylaws. Normally, we do that after we have our reorg meeting.
Right,
And
right.
they were asking us to affirm our existing appointment or they will roll over the appointment if we do not appoint somebody new. You are our representative.
Right, right.
I'm just putting out that my assumption is we roll you over because you've done it for so long.
I will be more than happy to
But I thought we
continue, but
needed to.
I was thinking we were also talking about the legislative liaison, because I saw something about that too, and I think I forwarded that on to Mr. Toiber and said, will you address this? I thought I
No,
did.
no, that was whether or not we wanted to follow.
That was that Seminole thing, but
Right.
a lot of my emails have been bounced back to me. Something was wrong with my email, and a lot of my emails were not going forward.
Well, I don't think our legislative liaison as a board has nothing to do with other consortia, because we all represent each together as the consortium and to the FSBA. We have a FSBA contact, which is Ms. Dozier, and then our legislative liaison is when we pick our delegation, and that we can do that in our November meeting, I
Right.
believe.
So we're just,
Yeah.
so the question is, everybody's comfortable with Mrs. Dozier continuing to represent
Sure.
us? Okay, great.
Yes.
Second question, this business of changing board policy with respect to the purchase order ceiling. We're not going to get to that policy for a while because we're still on 1, and we have to get to 6. I would like to ask the board's indulgence to instruct Mr. Martin to move that particular policy forward and bring it with the next set of policies that we will be reviewing.
Ms. Dozier?
Well, and I believe I spoke to this the last time that this was raised, and I will tell you that we've had an attempt to bring this in the past, and very clearly and very loudly, some of our constituents spoke and said that you have the fiduciary responsibility to look out for the taxpayers' dollars, and they did not want to see that ceiling increased. I would hate to do anything that would, I would hate to do, and I understand that it would make it easier for staff instead of having to bring everything, $25,000, anything over $25,000 to us. But at the same time, I think that we're representing Lee County and the taxpayers out there, and they want us to be responsible for the tax dollars. And as I said, I have heard loud and clearly from them in the past, and to raise that ceiling, I would have to do some asking of people that had objections, because I'm thinking of 3 faces that come to mind, how they feel about it now, if they do feel that it's a timeliness for it to be raised or what. But until I do something like that, I would not be able to support that.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes, I would ask a couple of questions. How long has the limit been at 25,000? What are some of our fellow governments using as a bottom limit? We have had inflation. We also, it's my understanding that it would be a reduction in costs for the procurement department if we had that increased limit. And if we bring forth a policy change, we have public hearing anyway, so I would be in favor of asking Mr. Martin to move it forward.
Ms. Lavrier, any comments?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I knew we would have a public hearing on that, so I believe we should move forward with it. But at the same time, I believe it would behoove us, and I don't know, Dr. Graham, I'm assuming if your staff might be able to get the information about what other local government agencies are doing, and also that information regarding the history, and that will just give us some more background knowledge to make a better decision and to provide the public as well.
Yeah, I think perhaps we can move it forward to a briefing to get that information, and then if the briefing goes well, then, and that would also give Ms. Dozier the time to ask the people that she needs to go out there and take a poll and kind of see. So I think the consensus here of the board is that you will get some of the information, Dr. Graham, as far as like districts and what other people are doing, and maybe what the savings or the impact it would have on the district, and then allow us to have that information and then move it forward.
And the request is to bring it forward with the next chapter that comes for review, which would be Chapter 5, the board directed before. And we still have some cleanup to do on Chapter 1, so I think we probably at least 2 months out from that
Okay.
timeframe.
Good timeline.
And then the third question I wanted to ask, Ms. Fisher requested that we use ParentLink to advertise a nonprofit event, which I think is, I have no objection to that. But what I'm wondering is if we need clarifying language somewhere about what ParentLink can be used for with respect to our not-for-profit partners, et cetera, so that it doesn't have to come up at the, we don't have to approve it individually.
I said the website, not ParentLink.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well,
Yeah.
even the website, same thing, same idea. I mean,
We
if
have-
that's our,
Yeah, I think we have a rule about nonprofits, don't we? On
the website?
Yeah, and to get approval for flyers. Yeah.
Flyers.
Yeah, we do have something about flyers.
Right.
I don't know that we have
So-
anything about,
Mr. Martin?
There is policy with respect to handouts. I'm not sure. You do have a policy with respect to acceptable use of technology that includes the website. I'm not sure it has any language with respect to advertisements by nonprofits, but we can take a look at that.
okay, thank you. Those are my comments.
Ms. LaRiviere?
Well, this is how negligent I've been. I have been almost a year now, and I have not gone into PeopleSoft to check my pay and to check to see how things have been going. I know someone's looking at me going, Pam, how could you not? I don't know how often and how frequently our employees are able to actually go in there. It is easy to do if you're not just thinking everything's fine. But if the employees would go in there, correct me if I'm wrong, that would also give them the clue to let them know if they received all of their pay. That should show up in their PeopleSoft. So that's a question I have out there. I believe that should be accessible to them when they go into their PeopleSoft for salary, since we no longer get the pay stubs.
Yes, they can see anything they've made and anything that's been deducted.
Okay, so then they can verify if they've received their
I
contract.
can also tell you, anybody that has contacted the district, and as much as we've talked about this here, I've asked payroll, and they have not gotten a whole lot more calls this year than they've gotten in the past. But anybody that's called or anybody that's been forwarded to us from you all when you got some concerns, they've received personal contact and had their individual questions answered personally. So we've dealt with it as best we could this summer.
That's what I thought. Thank you for that. And I just continue to be amazed at what is coming about within our community for our kids that we serve. I met with Angela Melvin the other day, and we were talking about a new piece that I think would interest Ms. Brooks that is going to be coming available called Valerie's House. Valerie's House is named for Angela's mother, who died when she was 10 years old as a student at Heights Elementary. And she never could she felt she was the odd one out. No one else was like her. And the goal and the vision for Valerie's House is that it would be a place where students can come who have lost a parent, and where parents can come who have lost a spouse, to be a support for the kids, to play games, but also to know I'm not the only one, and have the opportunity in a light scenario to help work through the process of losing a parent. So I find that an exciting piece, and it will be slowly rolled out until the house is built, but that is something that is coming, and I'm thrilled to see that in place. It's another way that we can cooperate. And I too am thrilled with the changes and the policies that are coming about with regard to health, education. I thank our legislators for being proactive with human trafficking. I serve on the Southwest Florida Coalition for Human Trafficking, and we've had had an incident of one of our elementary students that had been trafficked. And it's a lot closer to home than we think. And part of the whole health education curriculum and working with kids is letting them know what to look for and how to find out if you're being taken advantage, and to help them find that voice. So We have a lot of components out there. I know that this year, we do have staff members who are going to be trained on what to look for signs for human trafficking. And I'm glad that we as a district can serve our community in so many ways. It's a shame we live in a world that we have to go beyond education. But what a pleasure to be able to do that. And that's all.
Thank you, Ms. LaRiviere. I only have one comment. Regions Bank is holding a new shoes and socks drive for our local elementary school children. They're looking for boys and girls sneakers, sizes 1 through 7. The items will be distributed on August 18th to our Title I schools because they have the greatest need. Each branch in both in Lee and Charlotte County have drop-off stations at their banks. Also, you can contact the school board office. I will coordinate. I've got bank minions that are willing to come there wherever you are. If you have socks or tennis shoes for our children, they'll come and pick them up. They're going to be having their own teams doing their own donations and helping with this great cause. And so anything you can do, they'll be. I have a flyer that same thing with Ms. Fisher, I'll give it to Dr. Graham to put it out on the website for more information. But again, thank our our community for stepping up and helping our kids, and that's all I have. With that said, we will have a 5:05 special meeting for our budget. At this point, this meeting is adjourned.
Mr. Tarberry, we didn't get to public comment.
Oh, did I miss public comment? I'm sorry. So excited about our budget. At this time, Mr. Martin, I think, let's go. Dr. Graham, do you have anything to add?
I wanted to share a few things. One, I want to thank the board so much for the positive comments to the procurement department. Those are 10 people who support over 100 bookkeepers, thousands and thousands of POs. And Susan Millay, since I've been here, there hasn't been a question I've asked her she hasn't been able to answer it well. So thank you for acknowledging their work. I also want to thank the communications department. The website has changed, and I don't know, I know some of you last year were at the Horizon Council Business Luncheon, and the presentation when they were talking about where Florida ranks as far as people coming here to move their businesses, they talked about the importance of the website and that's what they're learning. And it's sometimes the first and last stop for people. If they're not impressed as soon as they get there, they don't look much further. So the communications office has worked with a lot of people in the district to update and make our website comparable with what a strong business would do. Anytime you make a change like that, there is some where's this and why can't I find that? And anybody that's called or anybody that has sent a concern about what happened to this, we have responded to. But the overwhelming response to the changes has been positive. So I'm grateful to communications, and Laura Howard, who is our webmaster, has done a phenomenal job with that. Also, we have made a commitment here at the district level that we're going to be sharing with schools. We want to begin to call ourselves a pre-K-12 district, so that we can emphasize the importance of early childhood. We know that, we talk about it, the research supports it, but when we talk to people, we want to be sure that they understand that we have a very large pre-K program, and we want people to know that we are getting the children younger and younger. So when you hear us refer to, instead of K-12, pre-K-12, that's just, it's really a verbal reminder to us that we have this whole group of children that we need to be sure and remember that we have. And just some general things as the summer begins to wind down. It's our last Friday off this week, our last 4-day week. We go back to 5-day weeks next week. Fall sports begin at the high schools next week. That's an exciting time for freshmen in particular, or scary time, I don't know which. Fifth quarter just ended, and the teachers and administrators, the feedback, we had a meeting with them last week. The feedback's been very positive. We're excited to see the data, we did a pre and post star with those kids to see, we're trying to eliminate some of that regression that occurs during the summer. So we're excited to look at the data from fifth quarter. The Ida S. Baker Band has been asked to perform at a Miracle Game on August 17th. If you want to go to one, they're selling tickets for that. The Multicultural Center of Southwest Florida is doing their 16th annual backpack at Harborside on August 2nd. If you've never gone to that, it is amazing. The first 2,000 students ages 5 to 12 will get free backpacks and school supplies, and it's just cool to watch them walk, and their eyes as big, anything that they see they can put in their backpack. So we're excited about that. They do have to have a parent or guardian with them to get the supplies, but it doesn't cost anything to get in except maybe a little heat while they're standing in line to get in. The Lehigh Senior High Teacher Leader Program has been featured in a federal Department of Education video. And if you want to see it, it's being, the video is to show that they're a model of excellence as far as teacher leader program. The video is on our district Twitter page if you haven't seen it. And just to reiterate that we have young children coming, we right now are anticipating 5,409 new kindergartners. So God bless the kindergartner teachers, I guess, is what, and God bless those parents, because I know that that's a very wonderful, exciting, traumatic time for them. So lots happening. We're excited. The new school year is almost upon us. So thank you for your support and your leadership in this district, and thanks for allowing me to lead as well.
Mr. Martin, do you have a law minute before we go to our public comment?
No, sir, we can proceed.
Okay, public comment, please.
Okay. School board policy provides the opportunity at this point to address the board concerning a matter on this briefing meeting agenda. The time allowed per speaker is 3 minutes. The subject of comment is limited to the items on the agenda.
Mr. Martin, do you have any cards?
No, sir.
Do I have anybody on the right side of the room that would like to speak? I have one. Anybody on the left side? We have one. Okay, we'll start with you, Mr. Fox.
I don't know if it's on the agenda or not, but these screens right here, the noise from those things continue to be terrible. You cannot hear a thing. Would like to request that these be replaced with some smart TVs, some flat screens that could eliminate the noise factor, and it would help the audience greatly. You can't, when you're up here, you don't realize how much noise those fans on those things make. It's crazy. You can't hear a thing.
That's why they only have
So that's all I had to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Ms. Quackenbush.
Thank you. I'm Chris Quackenbush, and I have a number of comments. One about the report we received from our lobbyist with regard to 7069, the new bill. And he mentioned that they have limited our test to 5% of a student's time. I am wondering what the mechanism could possibly be to measure such a thing, who is assigned to that, and what happens when you go over the 5%, which was the original bill 616 by, what's his name? Anyway, so I'd like to ask that question. What do we know about those issues? Secondly, I would like to know what happened to the 900 students who were affected by the EOCs. And I would like to know whether or not the report cards have actually come out with the scores. I have conflicting reports on that. I have a letter from someone who got a negative effect from the EOC on their report card. And then I heard that none of the report cards have actually arrived yet. So people are still unaware of exactly what their scores were. So it would be very useful if we could have some answers on those issues. Also, I see that from the actual raw test scores that we have declined against the state average and lost 8 points. This is contrary to what our surrounding counties have accomplished. So the state average for the algebra test score was 67. Lee's average was 65%. The ELA was even worse. Lee County was 52%, state average was 54%, Collier was 58%, Charlotte was 58%, and Glades was 57%. So our neighboring counties are doing significantly better than we are, and we have actually declined year over year. So we'd like some answers on those issues.
Thank you, Ms. Quackenbush. Okay, having no more public comment, and the board attorney has no more comments, we will now say that the next meeting will be at 5:05 time certain for our budget hearing. At this point, this meeting is adjourned.